The toddler would reach for her mother, and the husky would push between them, every time, without fail. They called a trainer. They called a behaviorist. They almost called the rescue. The neurologist was the one who finally explained it. Nobody had been looking at the right patient. Ghost was a 3-year-old Siberian husky. Ice blue eyes, white and gray coat, 62 pounds of control energy. He had been in the Ortega household before their daughter Marisol was born. Elena and Roberto Ortega had prepared carefully. Obedience training refreshed. Slow introduction protocol. Supervised access only. Ghost had accepted Marisol with the quiet attentiveness of an animal that understood its hierarchy, had reorganized, and was comfortable with the new arrangement. For 14 months, nothing unusual. Ghost watched Marisol the way he watched everything. Steadily, without anxiety, from the appropriate distance. Then Elena began having headaches. Not bad headaches, not migraine level, not anything that sent her to a doctor. The low-grade, persistent kind that she attributed to sleep deprivation, which was real, and to screen time, which was also real, and to the general grind and weight of managing a toddler and a part-time job in a household. She took ibuprofen. She kept moving. Ghost started pushing between them on a Wednesday. Elena was sitting on the living room floor with Marisol, the way she did every morning, the toddler in her lap, both of them looking at a board book about vegetables. Ghost came from across the room, not at a run, with that particular husky directness, and walked between Elena's legs and turned to sit facing outward, his back pressing into Elena's chest, his body creating a barrier between Marisol and her mother. Elena said his name. He did not move. Marisol, who was 20 months and found most things funny, thought this was hilarious. She reached around the dog for the book, and Ghost shifted slightly, but did not leave Elena's lap space. Elena stood up, and Ghost stood too, and walked with her to the kitchen. And when she sat at the table, he sat directly beside her chair. Leaning against her leg with his full weight, she picked up her coffee, and his eyes tracked the mug. Roberto watched from the doorway. He said, "He's being weird." Elena said, "He's jealous." It was the most convenient explanation. Ghost had been the center of the household for 3 years. Marisol had displaced him. He was inserting himself between Elena and the child to reclaim proximity. It was textbook attention-seeking behavior. Elena had read exactly this pattern in 2 different dog training books. She was wrong about the subject. She was right about the attention. Ghost was not seeking Elena's attention. He was paying attention to Elena. Over the next 3 weeks, the behavior escalated. He followed her from room to room, which was not new. But now he positioned himself against her body at every stationary moment, sitting beside her on the couch, his full weight pressing into her thigh, standing behind her in the kitchen, his chin on her lower back, following her into the bathroom and sitting outside the door and pressing his muzzle to the gap at the bottom and holding it there. Elena mentioned it to her mother on the phone. Her mother said it was sweet. Elena's mother had a way of finding everything sweet. Roberto said they should call the trainer. They called the trainer. The trainer came on a Saturday and watched Ghost for 45 minutes and said she had never seen that exact behavior before and suggested a behavioral specialist. The behavioral specialist was a woman named Dr. Anita Rao, who had spent 11 years studying canine human emotional attachment. She watched the video Lena had filmed on her phone. 2 minutes of Ghost pressing his full body against Elena's side while Elena sat on the couch. Marisol playing on the floor nearby. Dr. Rao watched it twice. Then she asked when Elena had last had a full neurological workup. Elena said she hadn't. Why would she have? Dr. Rao said, "I'm going to say something that is outside my area of practice. I want you to hear me and decide what you want to do with it. Dogs can detect changes in body chemistry, in sweat, in breath, in the subtle shifts in how a person carries themselves. What I'm seeing in this video is a dog that is tracking you, not your daughter. He's not jealous of her. He is not seeking your attention. He is paying attention to something about you. I would speak to your doctor. If you stay for stories about what animals sense before we do, you are in the right place. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one." Elena called her doctor that Monday. She mentioned the headaches. She mentioned that her dog had been, she used the word fixating, on her for 3 weeks. Her doctor, Dr. Yemi Adebayo, ordered an MRI because Elena had a family history and because the headaches had been persistent. The MRI found a small arteriovenous malformation, an abnormal tangle of blood vessels on the brain. That was producing the headaches and had a low but real risk of rupture if undetected. Not a crisis. Not an emergency on the day of discovery. But something that required monitoring, management, and in Elena's case, a procedure to address it proactively. Dr. Adebayo referred her to a neurovascular specialist. The specialist, Dr. Marcus Ibarra, looked at the imaging and said, "Good catch. Earlier the better." Elena asked him, what would have happened if it had gone undetected for another year or two? He was quiet for a moment. He said, "These are difficult to predict. But I'm glad you came when you did. Has your dog ever focused on you, specifically on you, in a way that felt different? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard." Ghost had not been watching Marisol. He had been watching Elena. The headaches were the signal he was reading. Not jealousy, not attention-seeking, but the particular chemical and postural signature of a brain under low-grade physical stress. A dog's nose contains 300 million scent receptors. The compounds associated with vascular changes in the brain are present in sweat and exhaled breath. Ghost had been pressing himself against Elena's body for 3 weeks because something about her body chemistry was different, and he did not know how to say so in any language except proximity. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never asked for anything in return. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. Elena's procedure was completed 6 weeks later. Outpatient, successful. The headaches resolved over the following month. Ghost stopped pressing his full weight against her leg the week she came home from the hospital. He returned to his normal behavior, steadily attentive, appropriately distant. The Husky equilibrium that had been his baseline for 3 years. He still checks. Elena notices it. Every now and then, Ghost will look at her for a moment longer than usual, that ice blue scrutiny, and then he exhales and looks away. She lets him look. The next story involves a dog who stopped eating for 4 days. Nobody understood why until they looked at what the dog was watching.